I'm not a big fan of the woods. It was my biggest concern when the kids started living with me, that they wouldn't share that with me. Fortunately for me, or unfortunately in general, we're pretty similar. I wasn't always afraid of woods though. I actually used to love them. When I was younger, I lived near the woods. They were my backyard. And every day I'd go inside to walk and think and kick leaves and snap sticks. It didn't matter how long I walked in there. Where I walked, I always found myself at a small descent, one I'd follow onto a sandbank. A little river would be what kept me from passing to the other side. I tried to swim over just a couple times, but something would always keep me from having the guts to go all the way. I think what scared me most was the depth. You could only take a single step into the river before it instantly dropped off into what seemed like infinite darkness. So, I always sufficed with just sitting against the grassy drop-off into the area and reading something or other. I recall very few of the books I read back then. Anyways, that's not really important. One day, I was reading there when I heard something collide on the sandbank. It was a rock. I looked all around and couldn't figure out where it had come from, till I happened to see another one as it was falling toward the sandbank. It had come from somewhere ahead of me, over the river, the other side. I remember just sitting there, watching the other sandbank, waiting for another rock to fly over, but one never did. My eyes became fixed on the dark between the trees. Something had to be there. Eventually, I left for the day. I just couldn't relax again. I didn't return for a while. The thought that there was something else over there watching me had been too much, especially with how much my mind loved to run itself ragged. I imagined all kinds of horrible creatures on the other side of that river. A zombie? A ghost? A cannibal? The only reason I could think of that last one was from a friend sending me a particularly gory video over text a few months before then that still has me squirming when I think about it. I think it took about 2 weeks for me to gather up the courage to go back there. Home was just too uncomfortable a place to read. Too noisy. So back through the woods to my comfy little riverbank. I sat there, reading whatever book I'd picked up from the library, and it was nice. Then I heard that sound again. The sound of something slamming against the sand. It was a rock. It had landed quite close to me, close enough to grab. So I did, and holding it in my hand, I found a word scratched into the back of it. It said hello, though it was difficult to really read. I looked back over at the other side. There was nobody there. Again, just the riverbank, just the trees. With some sort of sincere curiosity. I'm not sure what I was feeling, but it was strong enough to compel me to stand, pull my arm back, and send the rock flying back to the other side. I watched it fly, managing to avoid falling in the river and land on the sand opposite me. I watched, waited. Nothing, not for a minute or two, until another rock came flying up from the other side, somewhere behind the trees, landing next to me. This one also had a message written on it, just as messy. Ask for something. I stood there thinking. Felt too good to be true. If it was, though, should I waste it asking for something I didn't really want? I decided eventually to ask it for a book, one that had just come out at the time. In truth, I really didn't expect anything to happen. Maybe it would throw over another rock laughing at me or something embarrassing. Instead, though, I saw something larger coming up from the other side, shadowed against the sun. I reached out my hands and was somehow able to catch it. The thing was light and was a book, the exact book. I looked at it, felt it, scrubbed my thumb over the pages. My heart soared. I thanked whoever it was on the other side, again and again when another rock came over. See you tomorrow. I promised it I would come tomorrow, and after that, no more rocks. I left when the sun seemed ready to touch the horizon, over the moon for the gift I'd just received. I was sure to spend the whole night reading it. I had kept my promise to come back the next day, this time with the intent of getting to know the thing. It had given me a gift, after all, so in my little head, that must have meant it wasn't so bad. I arrived there and waited till I saw a rock coming over the river. Hello. I asked it for its name and got another rock in response. Ask for something. I was confused. I tried asking it again, but nothing. I decided to be tricky. I said what I wanted was its name. After a moment, another rock came over. Friend. That seemed so cute to me. It felt like an animal, kind and curious. I thanked it for the gift, and another rock came over. See you tomorrow. I took the friend rock with me that day. I still have it now. It's always gonna be with me. That's something I came to terms with a long time ago. I came back every day after that. I thought it was a much nicer place to be already, what with not having to be yelled at by my mom for being forgetful or doing something she thought was stupid. That didn't happen when I was there. Felt nice. I can't lie though, all the free things I got from this friend were nice too. I was always careful not to ask for anything that felt too big though. I didn't want to feel like I was taking advantage of someone for something too nice. A rule I try to stick by even now to the best of my ability. Though that's more because of friend than anything else. You see, there's one gift that thing gave me that trumps all the others in weight. It had been about 3 months since I started interacting with friend. I had mostly given up on actually asking for things. The stress of accidentally asking for something that was too much always hanging over me. Instead, I would just ask it questions. Things like, how long are you arms? How deep is the river? What did you eat today? Long as branch. Too deep for you. Something squishy. That day, though, I didn't have a question. I remember being mad. Sad? Mom had yelled at me that day. Louder than usual. Scarier than usual. You little fucking idiot. I had tried making my own lunch because I was scared of waking her up, and made some mess on the counter. It made her so angry. I remember being able to see her eyes bulge. She looked like a monster. All of that was stewing around in me while I sat at the river, holding friend's greeting rock. I wasn't sure if I should ask for it, but I really wanted it. More than anything. I asked friend to make mom stop yelling at me. The rock took a while to come over. Felt like I was watching the earth itself in a state of deep thought. When I grabbed the rock, it only said one word. Tomorrow. I waited there for a long time, hoping maybe it would throw over something else, something more immediate, but it didn't. I eventually relented and returned home for the day. When I exited past the tree line into our backyard, I remember Mom standing there on the porch, staring right at me. She was crying. She came down the steps and walked toward me, bending down to hold me close. I didn't understand why she looked so sad. I was more so uncomfortable having to maneuver around her large and firm belly. She didn't say anything to me after that, but it felt as though there wasn't really anything to say. At least I felt like it would be a quiet night. It was. Dinner was silent, and I wasn't disturbed at all while I did my homework or when I eventually went to bed. Even the next day, I came down ready for school and Mom didn't seem to say a word. She had made me lunch, though. Seeing that had made me feel good. Really good, actually. Had friend caused this? Then what did it mean by tomorrow? I pondered on that all throughout the school day, barely able to focus on reading. It had actually made me a little nervous. If things were going to stop being noisy on their own, maybe I had bothered friend for nothing. I hoped it was possible to take back my request then. Friend was my friend, after all. They didn't deserve to have their time wasted like that. So, like usual, I got off the bus, made my way to backyard and past the tree line, wandering my way through the woods, waiting for the river to come into view. The time it took to get to the river was never consistent, but I can't recall a time where it felt like it took forever. This time was no different. Actually, it was different. Felt faster than any other time. I think now that friend was probably the cause for that. It must have been excited for me to see what it had done. To help. To make my mom stop yelling. Its gift to me was waiting there. In the sand. Next to a rock. A message written on it. See you. Next to the rock was something I had seen before in one of my science textbooks. Maybe a couple times in films. Described once or twice in books I had read. I knew what it was, anyway. It was a fetus. It wasn't moving. I was frozen solid. I couldn't process it if I had to explain why I so efficiently shut down. I just looked at it, wind occasionally blowing sand onto it. Eventually, I slid down to the little thing and bent down, scooping it up in my hands. I remember trying to recall in my mind if there was an obvious difference when it was a growing boy or growing girl. To me, it just looked like meat, but I knew it was more than that. When the thinking became unbearable, but I promise, I thought about a lot there, I climbed my way back up, holding the fetus against my chest. The walk back felt slow, like everything was stretching, pulling, tearing. I exited the tree line and saw the porch door open. From this far away, I could still see my mom's feet over the couch's arm, the red dripping down on the carpet. I went to a neighbor's house and asked them to call the police. I never went to see what Mom looked like. I could imagine it, and I didn't want to remember her that way. There's something about a clear mind that brings such logic to you, I found. I ended up going to live with my extended family. My aunt is a good person. She did her best for someone who never planned to have any kids. I did my best not to be a burden on her, like I was on my mom. I really always was a burden on her. As for friend, I never went back to that river. I've never gone into any woods, thinking that maybe if I ever went inside any, I'd end up right back there. That didn't mean it left me alone though. It just comes to me now. Rocks tapping against my window every night. I never bothered trying to catch a glance at it. For years, I didn't even respond to it. I deserved this. Of course I deserved this. I finished middle school, graduated from high school, spent 2 years in college, and ended up moving into the room above the shop I work at. And still, it throws rocks, waiting for me to ask it for something. Eventually, I did. I asked it to let me take responsibility. I'm not a big fan of the woods. My sister isn't either.